Ready? Y'all ready to come up? Good. Ready. Do this.
Cheers. Thanks everyone for being here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Cheers.
Cheers. So I was thinking about everyone at this table, and I feel like we are probably have been doing legal ops longer than a lot of people who are probably watching. I mean, over 10 years, about that.
14
14.
now. Yeah.
It's just completely exploded. There's people in far corners of the earth that reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, I do legal ops too.
Every day. New people, new companies.
So would you say we're mainstream now? Are we mainstream?
I don't think so.
Quite. No.
Really?
No.
What percent of companies have legal ops, would you say?
Really good question.
That's
it's
probably
still
the
tiny
answer.
though, right?
Yeah.
It's still probably about 10%.
Do you need a legal background, would you say, to get into legal ops, or can you hire outside of that?
I'm a no.
We've debated
No?
this
I
in
don't
a
think you
few
need
circles.
it.
I don't think you need it, but you have to be prepared to learn up. And if you don't invest in that, you'll have some failures early on.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, if you're gonna help run any kind of business, you have to understand who the people are, what the business is.
Exactly.
In some ways, I think a legal background could probably hold you back a little bit if you're not engaging with that material in the right way.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I go back and forth because I have the legal background and I went to law school, but I'm like, do I need it to do this job?
The lawyers at the table are going, I don't need the JD.
I don't think so. I don't think
it.
I don't think you need it
Controversial.
for it. But I'm like, I didn't know there was another way. And
Yeah.
So you two are lawyers.
Yes,
Yeah.
was
We are.
recovering
You are
lawyer.
And we're not
We're not.
lawyers.
Yeah. I mean,
even 50-50 here, really.
Yeah.
Even mixed.
and I think, we work in a world where we have to get people who are lawyers to think and do differently, and you have to think differently in our role.
yep.
Yeah.
So if you're the head of legal ops, then do you own the whole tech stack for legal, typically?
Ideally,
Yeah.
yes.
And ideally,
If you don't,
Yeah.
who's influencing?
I mean, and not just
Like
for
a CIO?
legal, like
IT?
could,
Yeah, it's your
the
partnership with
company.
IT, right? And how do you collaborate with them?
we don't have IT where I'm at now, so it's us.
There's no centralized IT at Netflix. So each function kind of leveraged its own tooling for what they needed to
100%.
do, even if it's an enterprise solution.
Yes-ish. Netflix engineered a lot of internal tools, and so there's a lot of alignment to be done, but we're in the process of taking out an in-house built contract management solution.
Oh, good for you.
Like taking it out, like in all ways. You guys know I like to take things out.
So one thing I think is fascinating, I meet with a lot of legal teams who say, we needed this, and then they start to, kind of talk about making a purchase, and all of a sudden, IT comes out of the woodwork, sales come out of the woodwork,
Finance is
procurement comes out of the
there,
woodwork,
HR
finance is there,
ready to party.
because every team does contracting,
Yeah.
and this is a business process, and you got to work with all these different teams, and it feels complicated.
Yeah, well, we consider it more enterprise tech, frankly, because of that. Who owns it in your companies? Because we often wonder, who owns that decision? Who owns managing it?
I think it starts as lawyers are spending too much time and we're getting inundated with emails and the ball is being dropped. And for most of what we're doing on the commercial side, it's intake of contracts.
Yeah.
Whatever is coming in that needs to be signed or accepted, it's all gonna have one intake, and everyone in the business.
Dreams.
So Jen, you're saying dreams. Does that feel hard to actually implement?
Yeah,
Like that?
Netflix are just empowered to do your thing and be free and almost avoid process. So if I put intake up first, I don't know, I wouldn't get high adoption. I'm approaching it like a backwards contract life cycle. I'm starting with repository, taking out the in-house, and then working my way back up to the beginning of the contract. So give me
It's
time.
the size you're at though. So even if I had to go and speak to every single person, I
Yeah.
could do that in a month. And
Yeah, no,
you
can't.
could not.
I need an army.
So I'm going to
So-
challenge you on
Yeah.
that. If you go repository first, you're spending a lot of time and money gathering everything that's under someone's desk in a box,
Yeah.
something in a drive, something in another folder, getting it all in one place, which is really important. But it's really hard to measure the ROI, and I'm always focused on how do you show that legal ops is kicking butt.
Yeah.
But if you start with the automation and the intake, and you're getting things coming through faster, and you're accelerating deals, and you've got metrics, and you can make decisions with that data, you suddenly are being looked at as the hero at the company, because sales is like, oh my God, I don't have to talk to legal for 4 days, I can get this done on my own, right? Procurement's getting stuff done faster, you're hiring people faster.
We made that shift. When I arrived in my role, we were underway with a repository initiative. but people were really, really eager to see value. And so we paused on repository for a little bit, and we said there are 6 agreements that are requested most frequently, and we're just gonna focus on these 6 right now.
So I'll actually say I think repositories are a complete waste of time. You can extract data from your agreements without a repository, which is what people are really after. It's not the paper.
Yeah,
it's not, I mean, we don't paper anymore, but it's not the PDF. It's the data that's in the PDF.
I think there's almost a pain point kind of threshold for each company by repository or workflow or whatever it happens to be. And some are super high in repository because I'm gonna get fired if I can't find this stuff. And then others are like more workflow. So I do think it varies based on company and severity of pain point.
But I think there's a third bucket. Like, I think there's workflow. I think there's like a place you store your agreements in an organized way. And then there's agreement analytics. And like, that's something completely different. That's like really interesting.
So, and I think you're probably all starving because I'm starving. So I'm gonna get up and get the food and I will be right back.
Let us know if we can help.
All right, go ahead, keep drinking.
We'll just nerd out over here.
Okay.
Perfect.
Back to contract.
So there's workflow, there's workflow analytics, and then there's post-execution analytics.
But I think that for the ops team, the cycle time is really important.
Well, it depends on what your business wants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we did at Cisco, measuring cycle times. We shaved a week, call it 7 days off of contract cycles. In a $60 billion company, do the math. It's significant. It is significant, and then legal ops starts to pay for itself and more.
Right, and then everyone comes to you with more ideas and wants you involved rather than in the beginning where you're trying to be like, knock on doors and say, can I help you guys?
Right.
That's what we're trying.
And you can show those metrics in real time.
Thank you, Wyeth. This looks amazing.
You're very welcome. Thank you all again for coming.
Shall we?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Really good.
I love butternut squash.
It's the season. I cut you off on something we were talking about, and I'm blanking on what it was now.
We were talking analytics. We kind of followed up a little bit. Just, I think there's a lot of untapped value in those post-executed agreements. So when I mostly think of analytics, to Allison's point around like that third bucket, for me, it's around that post-executed contracts.
Yeah.
And a lot of the pain and the questions around like, what about this agreement or this counterparty or this term, all in your post-executed agreements that can inform your contracting process.
You're ending up with a lot of these companies that aren't started by lawyers, and so they're started by people that are used to those types of data points. And so then they're pushing on their general counsels, and you just have stacks of paper? Like, what are you showing me? And so then those, right? Maybe if you're lucky, you have a spreadsheet.
I'm always curious, like, what's the scorecard you show your CEO?
Right,
And
so
a lot of deer in headlights.
Yeah, because it hasn't, traditionally been there. And so I think that's actually where legal ops is coming in. That's honestly why I was brought into my current role. We want data.
This looks amazing.
Well, cod, I hope everyone is okay with fish.
Yeah.
Fish is great.
All right, so I have a question. We're kind of in like a bit of a economic downturn. When I started legal ops, it was in 2008 at Google, and it was kind of the Great Recession. It was the end of the world, but I feel like that was kind of more of our opportunity to shine. And how is it feeling for you guys in your roles now?
I left Meta in March, started at Coinbase in April, and then literally 6 weeks later, everything started falling apart. I used it as an opportunity to have more conversations with people around the department. And it becomes a little easier, to your point, because there are economic realities that we are uniquely situated to address.
Yeah.
It's we're getting ready for 2023 planning for us right now. It's how do we build a budget that makes sense in these economic times. Same thing for headcount. Why do lawyers not understand money? Like, we don't have enough. Why do you want that much? Like, those kinds of questions just really get under my skin.
Yeah.
In my role, I was over hiring another attorney because they don't need more attorneys if I can cut back some of their work.
Exactly.
And by automating and doing that and taking over data and doing these other things, I've just taken a ton off their plate, and they now have the time to just focus on the legal work and the advice and the contracts and the selling.
I know for me, we feel really well positioned to make sure that we're responding to how our company is shifting right now. So I feel like in a lot of ways, our department's really fortunate to have legal operations, that without it, we wouldn't be as prepared as we are.
That's my biggest sell to legal professionals, because when they see someone like me come in with slides and the automation, they get nervous. And I say, no, 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 this is gonna make your job way better. You know that ceiling that's very low over your job is kind of the goal. So that was a journey too, to kind of show them that and build the trust with them, and many get it.
How do you build the trust and show them? Because many of them, as we all know, it's like rolling a giant boulder up a hill, right?
Yeah.
And I'm working with that on my team. We're still a new team. We're getting to know each other, and I start our team meetings with questions. You know, do you believe in your horoscope? How much of that drives your daily decision making? Are you a dog person or a cat person?
I brought up the Zodiac. I've managed my team via the Zodiac. I'm like, you're being very Taurus right now. It's Los Angeles, so we're allowed to do that.
So we recently did a big AI launch. What are you all thinking about AI, and like, how do you see it impacting kind of your day-to-day, and what do you hope it can do?
It's critical. There's a lot of power to it. I think there's a lot of overpromise on it right now as well. So I think you tread a little bit carefully, but you know, for us, lately, for me, like if I'm making someone's life easier by using technology, that's a huge win. And if whatever the magic is, whether it's AI or better process or a different piece of tech, whatever that is in the background, I think has a huge bonus for the department and for the company.
Are lawyers resistant to it at all, would you say, legal teams, or are they excited about it? Or?
Well, when they first hear it, they think you mean robot lawyers, and they feel threatened.
Yeah.
And you have to educate and say, no, 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 I'm not replacing that. We'll always need you to draft deals. But I'm going to replace the number of times your contract managers Control F and find a clause and paste it into a spreadsheet and create your clause bank.
Spreadsheet?
Yeah,
I've got lost templates.
I think machine learning's biggest play in contracts right now is replacing Control F. I think Control F days are numbered. That's what I tell them. That's my sales pitch. And I'm like, you will all benefit from this tech, and they get it, and they're into it, and they're chomping at the bit for machine learned contracts. Yeah.
I mean, they're like existential questions. Like, you're always going to run into people that get really comfortable doing the same thing over and over again. It's just very basic common sense that we should all embrace it if it's explained the right way. And it's our job as people in legal operations to help people understand that. And if they're not understanding it, we're probably not doing our job as well.
I do a lot of work in diversity, and I spent some time with a behavioral scientist, a former practicing lawyer from South America. And she's talking to me about how human beings make choices, why they make choices. I was like, man, I wish I would have studied behavioral science as an undergraduate, because I would be nailing this job from day one. Like, I would have the predictive analytics down in my head like so easily.
On a young in career identity crisis fluke, I went to social work school and got a master's. I didn't realize until I got deep into this work, like, oh, I really understand the psychology behind this person's choices, and I get to know them, and I can create, as lawyers would say, a fact pattern or a map. Because I can go deep, and people leave, they can leave a listening session with me and feel like the empathy, not in this new corporate way we're all talking about empathy, but actually go, oh, like there's something there, there's something there.
Yeah.
So you're saying you're doing cross-functional kind of enlightenment and alignment and all that.
Evangelism.
And if we were in a bubble and all we had to do was by ourselves and just implement, done.
Crazy.
Which could be the best decision that you'll ever make.
Yeah.
A visitor, and it's a termite. We may have to get rid of that thing.
I mean,
Are you gonna get it?
But
Termites have wings?
They do.
Yeah.
I will scream if any bug is on me.
There it is.
Where'd he go? You see him? Oh, he's
Back
flying
up by
again?
the
It's his
light.
friend. Or,
Oh, another one?
Yeah.
Because they all came out from underground. All right, I will just grab him with my hand.
There we go.
Wow. That was really impressive.
Is he gonna do like compassionate release?
I would have
He did.
Smash it on my leg.
They are useful.
I was compassionate until I left, and then I
You
was
know
no
The
longer compassionate.
Sopranos.
All right, so we have a real Netflix person here. I'm curious, like, being a Netflix person, are you on it all the time? Do you hear all the inside stuff of what everyone's watching? Like, I guess, what is everyone watching?
Do you have
Yeah.
those dashboards?
This won't make the final cut, right? Okay, well, I can't say much about Netflix. I'll just keep it generic. But
tell us what you're watching.
the culture there is all about transparency, and we see shows before they come out. We get a preview strip inside
really? Cool.
our service.
Are there more K-dramas that I'm not even
Yes,
seeing?
tons more.
I do think actually the kind of the parting wisdom of, if I'm kind of new to legal ops and I've got the weight of contract management on my shoulders, like what are the first 1 or 2 things I got to think about?
Yeah.
Know your culture. We start there. Our cultures are different, and we all said contract management is kind of our bread and butter, and Jen's not going to implement it right now because that's not going to work for her culture. It doesn't matter what she throws at it. She could have the best process, the best system. It's not going to work. She has to start someplace else and bring them in later.
She also doesn't have a sales team, which I think is kind of unique.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, you have to work different angles.
I mean, along the same lines, like you got to know the problem you're solving for. I mean, that's not just a CLM thing. Like for anything you're doing, what sometimes a symptom is mistaken for a problem, and you're not even at like what the potential root cause could be. So I think to me, that's one of the priorities for anything, certainly in the CLM space.
Yeah.
I always just say leadership buy-in is so important. There's like no recipe for success, but there is a recipe for failure, and that is not having leadership buy-in.
Yeah.
Well, Wyeth, this was amazing. Thank you for hosting us. It was really fun. And thank you guys for coming. It was a great conversation.
It was indeed.
Whose house are we doing this at next time? Is Mary at your house?
Yeah, I can ask you guys.
You all are welcome back here. I would love to do that. I've learned a ton tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks,
I really
guys.
appreciate you all coming and sharing all these stories. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, now I want to hear about Netflix behind the scenes that you didn't want to talk about. There you go. I want to hear that part now. You didn't want to talk about.
Is that enough fun B-roll?